Hi, welcome along to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast. Delighted to welcome Gavin Dixon today. Gavin, how are you?
I'm really good, mate. Really good to see you again.
And you, mate? Yeah, we've met up many times over the years, got a lot of mutual acquaintances, and got you on really to talk about your book, which is forthcoming later this year, The Devil, Diary of an Addict, which is going to be a bestseller, and for all the right reasons, it has to be said, because although there's a part of this book which will have people, I think, cowering under their duvet. There's other parts of this book which are very inspirational and which are going to lead, hopefully, to you, becoming a big, powerful speaker in the world of how to recover from being an addict. But let's go back to the start. Just tell us a little bit about where you were born and raised, Gavin.
I was born in Chester Street in 1980. Brought up with a middle-class family, had such a perfect family. My mum and dad were so loving. My dad had a good job. I never wanted for anything. My mum was at home and she was perfect mother. When I came in, tea was on the table. Had two sisters, an older one, a younger one, who were all like best friends. So it just shows that addicts don't just come from broken homes and they're not just criminals or gangsters or like so deprived and had nothing or things bad them. It affects it can affect everyone in the world, which my past has shown. But so it's I mean it's such a varied disease, which when I've been to like meetings and all that, it goes up as high as like doctors have it, all the way down to people who have nothing have it. So it can affect everybody.
Getting back to your childhood, I mean, you paint a really nice picture there. Middle-class family, being brought up with a loving parents. It sounds very similar to the upbringing that I had. I mean, what were you like at school, Gavin?
Mate, at school, I was very popular with all the teachers. I was always called the blue-eyed boy because I had bright blue eyes when I was younger. They've gone now. I wish I still had them, but I was popular with all the teachers. I excelled at all sports. I was naturally intelligent, but I didn't like. I wasn't the top of the class because I didn't like revise and I didn't like homework. But I was naturally intelligent, so I was always above average. So I loved school. I loved being around all my mates. Always going out games of football, and I loved everything about school.
Were you ambitious at the time? Did you know what you wanted to be?
When I was younger, I actually wanted to be a lawyer. Don't know why, but I was just like, I wanted to be a lawyer. And that was a thing that actually when I went into school, like when the senior schools, I studied Latin. I mean, I only know 2 words in Latin because I cheated on my Latin exam. Even though I got an A, I cheated. I was left in the classroom by myself because I had my appendix out, so I had to resit my Latin exam. And I got an A, but I was left with the book, so I cheated on my Latin exam. I only know 2 words. But but once I got into sport and all that, which was my first addiction, sport. I went into Taekwondo when I was 5-year-old, and that was my first addiction. It took over.
So you were very sporty then?
Oh, mate, I was so sporty. I was training 5 to 6 times a week. My dad would take us to classes on a night time, and I was addicted. I mean, Bruce Lee was my hero. Like all my mates had pictures of girls and stuff like that on the walls. I had Bruce Lee. And I used to my mates used to take the mickey out of saying, "Oh, where's Sensei Lee at?" and all this stuff. But I loved him. Every night I'd watch his movies, and I trained every night. My dad took us to training without fail every single night, and I was addicted. I craved it. And on like weekends when there was no classes, that was the first feelings. When looking back now, that's the first feelings I got of addiction. I craved it. I was angry with my parents. I was like a little spoiled kid, not through gifts, just like because I wanted my addiction, me Taekwondo, because that's what I loved. I mean, I excelled at it though as well. When I was 8-year-old, I became the first black belt in the country, the youngest black belt in the country, sorry. And then a lot of kids do give up when they get a black belt, they grow out of it, but I kept on going on. I became the youngest second dan black belt in Europe when I was 11-year-old. And then I fought for England. I was, and I won I never got beat until I was at the age of my first senior fight when I was 16. I fought he was a French European champion, and I was 16, he was 26. And although even everyone said I'd won the fight, I never got knocked down. He got knocked down. I broke his nose, but I lost that fight. And when I lost that fight when I was 16, it was, I just gave up on it. I just didn't want to do it anymore because I didn't agree with that. That's how much I loved sport. And that was my first big addiction.
Yeah, it's weird because I've spoken to many people about addiction over the years, and I always point to like the high profile characters, the sportsmen such as like Alex Higgins, George Best, but in particular in my own neighbourhood, Gaza.
Oh, mate,
Paul
he-
Gascoigne was the
without a doubt.
ultimate addict for me. He was addicted to the buzz of football at a young age, but he was in later life addicted to alcohol, of course, addicted to Class A drugs. And even when I worked on the doors, he was addicted to Red Bull. An addict is an addict.
It's 100%. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're born with addiction, it's not something which you're just like, oh, I'm going to take a drug one day, or I'm going to drink one day. You're going to be an alcoholic, or you're going to be an addict. It's got to be in your DNA. I mean, the World Health Organization actually classifies addiction as a real disease now. But even though they class it as a real disease, there's no help really from the NHS or the government. I mean, the NHS do as best they can when they can, but the government should be a lot more behind addiction. I mean, addiction costs on theft alone £2 billion a year to the UK taxpayer through theft, which sells on to provide drugs for addiction. It costs us £2 billion, which they're still not doing nothing about it. But it's but like you said with Gaza, I mean, I've only had the pleasure of meeting him once, and it was Callum Best who took us up. I had a meal at the Malmere's on, and I met. He was, like you said, he was my every team he went to, I supported. So I went from like Newcastle to Tottenham, then to Lazio. I loved him. He was. I think him or George Best are the most naturally gifted footballers ever lived. So
yeah, I agree. So getting back to school, obviously sport dominated your life. What did you leave school with qualifications?
Mate, I passed all my GCSEs, and I did, but I didn't want to go into higher education. I didn't know. I was kind of lost, really. I just loved going out drinking, because I started going out drinking when I was 15. The local nightclub in Chesley Street, Crocodillos. I don't know if you ever remember that or heard of that.
I remember it very well.
Well, the head doorman, Brian Percival, he lived opposite us. He was one of my dad's good mates, and he lived opposite us. So he took me and his younger brother, Michael Percival, to our first night out at Crocs when we were 15. So we thought we were the dog's bollocks, and we'd go in the club, we'd walk around the club, we'd start trouble, then we'd run to Brian when the big lads came after us. And so Brian would truck, but Brian was like my first hero, and it was really like the first apart from my dad's my hero, but Brian was like the first guy I looked up to, because when he would come back from his door when I was like from like 11, 12-year-old, I'd be sitting at my window with my light on, waiting until 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning when Brian came in, and whichever girl he brought back with him, he would always look up and make them wave at us. So I was like, dormant, fighting, it gets you girls. So I would look up to Brian. So when I left school, like I didn't want to go into higher education. I didn't want to do. So I worked at Komatsu, a YD scheme, and yeah, I fobbed out of it. I couldn't get into it. I was lost a bit. But then I got an amazing job with a telecommunications company. A friend of me, Taekwondo instructor, Neil Hathaway, gave us me start there, and I worked up, and I was high up in the engineers, and that's what I was doing before I got onto the Temptation Island. So it was, but I wasn't interested in. I couldn't. That's where my mental health comes into, because I couldn't settle thinking about things. I used to struggle with, like, do you know, like a bill comes through the post, and I get the bill, and I can read. I'm a naturally intelligent guy, but for something like a bill, I look at the bill and like it goes blurry, and I can't put in. Oh, I've got to pay this by this day. I've got to pay the. My mum has to come. My mum would have to come down and like get all my bills and start paying them out my bank, because I couldn't physically do it myself, which is where my mental health comes in. But with my mental health, I've suffered with my full life, but I never got diagnosed with it till I was 38-year-old. I mean, I've got like, I had to go and see a psychotherapist, do loads of tests, do loads of meetings. And I've got a list of about 12, 13 disorders, which it stops us being able to do things like a normal person, which is a form of addiction. I think the two mental illnesses, addiction, are so related, but it's not put together yet. But
so you work and you're on the ladder, which ultimately is a massive positive, especially in the northeast, in a time when unemployment was at all-time highs, and you're making money. Were you still living at home then?
No, I moved out of home when I moved out of home when I was 17, 18. What happened was, when I was younger, when I was 8, but just before my black belt grading, I was playing down the local youth centre, and we're playing Tig on High, and me being the cocky kid I was, like I got on the youth centre roof, and someone went to Tigger's, and I was showing off in front of all the girls at the youth centre, and I leant backwards, and I fell off the roof, and I twisted in there, and I shattered both. I shattered me unlearned me radius in my arms, and I cracked my skull down the front when I was 8, which postponed me black belt grading for like 3 months. But they said I would never ever be able to like do sport again, like with fighting with my arms, but which devastated with us. But and that my dad says, you're the master of your own destiny. If you want to go back in, we'll get you back in. And I went to rehab, trained, and I got back into that. But that's one of the biggest things I remember as a kid, breaking my arms.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it's quite traumatic, especially any head injury as well. You know, I've again spoken to many people over the years who maybe have had that little bit of trauma in their life, and it goes on to to infect them or impede their life for the rest of the time. So socializing, you started like many of us in the Northeast did at a young age, 15 years of age. But when you were working, you had a bit of money. Were you going out hell for leather on a weekend?
Yeah, I loved it because I went out when I was 15 locally, and then when we first chased in Newcastle, I went out. It was Monday night, it was student night, and my mates were like, "Oh, then like a uni," and I used to go out there, and it was down Baja Beach Club and Sea Nightclub, and that's where I met Stevie Lang. He's like one of my best mates. I love Stevie.
Good friend of mine, Stevie.
You know Stevie as well. He's always tell you what's with Stevie, it's how good a guy he is. When I was badly in addiction, he'd message me, "Mom, make sure my mom's all right." He was just an amazing person. But when Stevie was on the door at Sea Nightclub, he would always get his in him, and because Nigel was the manager there. Nigel, he's a lovely kid, Nigel Holiday, and they would always sort us out, put us in the VIP, and I loved it. I loved being that's another sensation, being in the VIP. That's where I got me first, like, oh, this is amazing. I felt special. And I would take it down there, would have the girls from Pure Ice only would come down the table and that. But one of the most stupidest things I did in Sea Nightclub was I thought I used to have fights afterwards with like the rugby teams used to go out and all that, and I used to think I was the dog's bollocks, but it was just stupid. But there was a big guy came in the Sea Nightclub, and people were fussing over him, and I got a bit of jealousy, and I was thinking, who's this prick? And then he came in. So anyway, I was at the bar. I went to the bar to talk to some girls, and he came and he pushed us. And I don't know how I didn't recognize him. So I turned around and I squared up to him. And I remember Stevie running over like, Gavin, he said, "Go on, get away, get away." And that's what this lad was so nice. He called us a kid. He says, "Listen, kid," he says, "It's all right, just go and have a good night." And I thought, is he patronizing? Is all this? And Stevie says, "Gavin, man," he says, "it's Glenn McCory, man." He says he'll destroy you. And I was like, oh, whatever. I remember going to the toilet and just sitting there thinking, shit, what have I even absolutely wiped the floor with? What have I done? And I went to the pub. He was a lovely guy. It's the only time I've ever met him in my life, but he was showed like he was a lovely, lovely man. He must have just looked down and thought, "Oh, you bless you little kid, I'll knock you out." But he was so nice he didn't do it. But I remember doing that at Sea Nightclub, and I thought, oh God, that was stupid.
Yeah, I've got many happy memories from Sea Nightclub myself. I worked down there with Stevie, and some were positive, some were negative, but yeah, it was a great club. And it was a great time as well. The Quayside was bouncing then, wasn't it? You mentioned Baja, there was the boat as well, the Tuxedo Princess, Jimmy's, Julie's, Sea Nightclub, Hanrahan's, Chase, of course, where I was head doorman. I mean, all of these places.
That's the first time I met you, and I remember because you were like, when we met you, you started getting all the door, you were doing mint like down there, and I remember looking, I was like, I remember telling Stevie, I said, "Oh, this Stevie Wraith." I said, I think he's what a cool, because you always dress smart, you always look the bee's knees, which you still do now. You look mint, mate, but it's like, it's you. I looked up to you as well, and that's the first time I ever met you down there. But you always one of those nice doormen, but you could tell you just don't cross this kid. You don't. You were just so nice and respectful to everyone who came there. And if someone stepped out of line, and you were always first in. Do you know what I mean? You were amazing doorman. I always looked up to that, mate.
Thanks, mate. It was great time, great memories. 18 years. The train robbers got less for what I did. I mean, look. So obviously the temptations, of course, for anybody who goes out drinking, doesn't matter whether it's Newcastle, Manchester, Liverpool, London, is of course drugs. So, when was the first time? Can you remember the first time you took drugs, and what did you take?
Mate, the first time I took drugs was. It was after Temptation. I did a show called Temptation Island.
Tell us about that then.
Right, so I did a show called Temptation Island, and I was shopping in Liverpool, and was staying at the old Moat House in Liverpool. It's knocked down now, but I was shopping there, and the director of the show, I can't remember, he's called Dan something, but his director came. I was actually chatting some birds up at the bar, and he came and he says, "I need you on my show." He says, "I'm not even going to interview you. I just need you on my show." So I didn't. It was the first time Temptation Island was screened. It was 20 years ago to this year, and so I was like, yes, straight away, get in. I want to be famous. I want to go on the TV. It'll get us more birds. It'll get us more attention. And that's where I was. But I did the show, and then it was amazing. I loved we filmed in Koh Samui in Thailand, and I met a girl on there. One of the other the girls who was a tempter as well. She was called Jerry Byrne, and I ended up meeting her, and we moved down to London together. And I hated drugs before that. I never ever touched a drug till I was 21. After this show, I stopped being friends with some of my mates because I didn't. I looked down to them because the perception of the addiction is so bad. I looked down on these people who took drugs, thought the scum, thought they had the bums or all this. I used to look down on the people who took drugs. They didn't have to be addicts. I just hated drugs. But with my first drug, I was so infatuated with this Jerry Byrne. We're like going out with each other, and I started going out on the London scene. And I was so drunk one night, and they said like, "Oh, hey, just have some of this, have this line." And I was so drunk, all my morals and everything went, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Then so I took this line, but then it was weird. I started taking the drug, and it got to the end of the night, and everyone wanted to go home, and I didn't. So I bought more, and I bought more. And that's when I didn't realize it was a problem. I just thought I didn't want the night to end. I thought it was just a good night. But that my good night was about 3 days. And they all went home, slept, went to work. Then I was just carried on partying in our flat. That was my first drug. And I'm not going to lie. I loved when I was just taking lines of coke. I loved it. But it was just like, I wasn't the same as everyone else. I knew there was something different there because I couldn't stop. I couldn't have it while I was out in the club. I couldn't have it for just one night. I was out partying for at least 3 nights at the start, which is nothing to what I did later on. But at the start, I would have to have like a couple of, I wouldn't go for like one day. It'd have to be 3 days before I even got some sleep. But that was my first experience of coke. And I just thought it was a cool, once I took my first time, I thought it was a cool drug.
And just with Temptation Island, just going back to that, you mentioned that this girl was a tempter. I mean, just give us the format. What was the actual format of that? Because we have like Love Island now, I guess, and there's been a lot of high profile, situations have developed from that with mental health, which again we'll come to. But tell us a little bit about Temptation Island, because people probably won't remember.
Island, what it was the show. We're in Koh Samui filming, and there was 4 couples, and there was 11 singles of each sex. So the 4 couples got separated, and the 4 girls who were in a couple got put with 11 tempters, guys, and the 4 guys got put with 11 tempter girls, and we just basically had to try and sleep with them. But the way we did it, I mean, what you don't see what goes on behind the scene is like the runners and the cameramen, they set it up so we'll see, "Oh, Gav, right, we've got this girl, like go and do this, or make it look as though you're kissing, or make it look as though you're going to walk in the bedroom with her, so look as though you're going into bed with her," and they would film it. So then they would show that film to the boys who were on the side of the island. So the boys would think that we'd slept with them. So the boys would do something with the girls, and then they would show that back to the girls. And so it was just like a spiral. So we're just setting up the people in the couples. So look, I mean, I loved it. I used to get my mates around. I used to get them all around to watch the show, and we loved it as young lads. We're like, "Oh, if it was some of that looked cool," but it's not something I would do again. But
yeah, no. It's all very well, isn't it? With hindsight, at the end of the day, with these kind of things, it seems like a great idea. Reality TV is very cheap to make, and ultimately, what they are doing is that they're manipulating young people's lives, and that's ultimately what it comes down to.
It is. Yeah, you're totally right, mate. And especially after the show, I feels like people like go from like the thing with Love Island, Temptation Island is, which I love watching. It don't get us wrong, it's good to watch, but they go from being not a normal person, to getting so much publicity and put in the public eye and I mean, nowadays the Love Island, they get put much more in the public eye than they do when I did that show, because it was just the old Sky One, but now it's on TV, what everyone sees so much, and they get put to the forefront, and then they get so much attention, they get so much things, and they haven't got a clue how to step in from the normal life into this life, and it's so hard for them. So I understand how there's so much mental health getting associated now with people who are in the limelight now.
So you start taking recreational drugs. It's something which you didn't want to do, but then you've just gone with the flow with a bit of peer pressure, I guess, and just being in that high life of the bubble that is after reality TV. But how does it escalate for you?
So mate, it escalates. So what happens is I took coke so much, and obviously through the London life and through growing up, I was just taking coke after coke after coke. In the end, I couldn't go out without coke. I couldn't function on it. And cocaine in my lifetime was just like breathing. It became my new normal. But then what happens is, your tolerance to the drug gets higher and higher and higher. And I could spend hundreds of pounds on coke doing the lines, and it wouldn't help us anymore. And that's how it escalates, because you look for your next high, you look for your next buzz, and you look to just not feel as in your own skin. And that's what drugs did do, is it made us feel normal. It's like when people take drugs, they go to this euphoric effect where they're buzzing. With me, taking drugs which made me feel normal and at ease with myself. But then that euphoric effect wears off, and I've got to look for the next high, which came into crack cocaine. And then crack cocaine, it wasn't enough, so then I had to go into injecting coke, and that was the worst drug I think I've ever come across, injecting cocaine. So,
I mean, that's pretty serious abuse, Gav, and it led to you really becoming an addict. And I just want to know, because obviously during lockdown, when we touched base again, and then lockdown was lifted, we met up, we had a coffee, and you were kind enough to send us like your initial first draft of the book, just to give you a bit of a bit of feedback, really. And I loved it. And what I went through the chapter list again before we did this interview today. What is an addict in your mind, Gavin?
So everyone has the wrong perception of addiction. It's like people who never struggled with addiction will never know what it's like. But you've got everyone thinks addicts like a bum, a junkie, criminal. But when we take our first drug, we take it voluntary, and that becomes our normality. So, but the best way of describing it is, because I could go into loads of like long words describing it, but the best way of describing it is you've got two parts. You've got your frontal lobe and you've got your midbrain. Your frontal lobe is what it makes it's like you're eating, you're breathing, your sex, your oxygen. That's your frontal lobe. But then your midbrain, it does all your decision makings. So it's just like, what should I have for tea? What should I wear? That's what your midbrain does. And what happens is your frontal lobe, which is your caveman brain, if the drug which you make a choice to take, which we do as a normal person, we choose like, oh, I'll go out tonight, like, should I have a drink? I'll do this. Or when an addict who is like diagnosed with addiction, it jumps from your midbrain to your frontal lobe. And once the drug is in your frontal lobe, you can't stop it. You don't have a choice. And it's people say, oh, we just don't take drugs. Once we take drugs enough and it jumps, then it's game over. You are addicted and there's nothing you can do about it. I would get up in the morning once addiction had took over, and I wouldn't think about what should I have for breakfast. I wouldn't think, what should I wear? I was totally drug. I need this drug now. I need this drug now. And cocaine was bad enough on that, but once you started to crack and injecting coke, it made it takes over. I mean, a few years ago, I went clean, and I was clean for about 6 months or so, and it was good, but I looked loads better. And then I relapsed, and when I relapsed, it wasn't just a night out. I went out, and my family and friends never saw us for 4 months. I was gone, and that's when I started injecting coke, and I was literally gone for 4 months. I probably slept about 2 or 3 days in the 4 month. I went down to, I think it was around about 9 stone, and I just looked a body of bones, mate. But the drug, it just takes over, and I had no aspect of it. I didn't know nothing about it. I wasn't educated on it as a kid. It actually just completely takes over your life. It destroys your life, but it just took over. It was drugs, crack and injecting cocaine was more important to me than oxygen. It's a simple. I would give up. If someone said to me, right, you can have this for a day, or you can go and live and breathe for a day, I would choose the drug. It's as simple as that. Because in fact, no, I wouldn't choose. I had no choice. And that's what addiction is. It gives you no choice, mate, and it's awful.
You sent me some photographs, and I mean, dear me, what do you feel when you look at that photograph of you during addiction?
It's mate, it's awful. I look at it, it reminds us of just having no control. I didn't know it was me. I honestly, God, when that picture was took, I was in my car and I was bollocking me mum because I wanted more. I just wanted more money. And I remember, I thought I looked good in that photo. I had a dressing gown on. I walked out the house and I slapped on some fake tan and my hair was all over. I look about a 70-year-old man, mate. I looked dead, and I was about 9 stone in that photo, and it just wasn't me. No one recognized us. No, I'd walk past my friends and they wouldn't even know it was me. But I thought I looked the same. I thought I looked good, and I wouldn't wash for weeks. I wouldn't change my clothes. The top photo there, that's another time I went round to my mum's for money and ended up going. I just felt like collapsed on the settee, and my mum and my auntie Jill came in, and I was just there with a needle hang out of us or a crack pipe, and that's how bad I was. So
let's do something which we don't normally do on a podcast, and another one of the subtitled chapters in your book is called A Mother's Letter, the parent of an addict. And we spoke earlier about, whether it was a good idea to ask your mum just to come on and say a few words, and we thought it was a great idea. So over to you with the introduction.
Yeah, my mum came on that bagged her in, just please, but she had to quickly go put her makeup on. So she's going to come and do this for you now, mate. So this is the mother.
Hi, are you okay?
Your mum, Sue. Mum, you've heard us talk about Steve, a good friend.
Hi.
Yeah, good to see you, and thanks for taking the time to come on. I mean, just showing those photographs, and just so you know which ones we were talking about, and the situations, I'm sure they're engraved on your mind as a mother. What's it like from a parent's perspective to see that child like this?
The worst thing about it is there's no control. There's nothing we can do. Absolutely nothing. I've tried everything. I mean, he looks older than me.
I do.
No, he did. And you can't tell him. You can't show him the photos. You can't shame him. There's nothing you can do. I've tried everything over the years. And I mean everything, from loving him to bits, to hating him, to telling him to get out of my life, to ignoring him, to cutting the phone off. And nothing works, just nothing at all. But he can't see where all he wants is money. If he's run out of money, or he wants the money to get the drugs, which it took me a lot of years to realise all I'm doing is enabling him. Every time I give him money, it's enabling him. And it's like the lies, the deceit, it's been absolutely horrendous. Conning us out of money, lying to us, setting up phone calls that I broke down, Mum, I've got the girl from the tyre place on the phone. It was no girl, it was another addict in his crack den, do you know what I mean? But it took me years to realise, and then when I did realise, I realised I'm actually killing my own son. So I had to either get him out of my life for good, or, you know what I mean, he had to come out of it. He had to come out of it, I had to come out of it. There's no in between at all. People say that you have to stand by them. There's a difference between stand by someone and enabling someone. So I did seek a little bit of help myself, just online. A guy from America was really good, send me messages. Not many of his friends, but I would say maybe 2, 3 of his friends have been really good.
Franny Savage, Steve.
And they've stood by us. Obviously, my husband, Gavin's stepdad's been amazing.
Yeah, yes.
But for all he told me, no more, don't do it. I used to cause arguments with him because I used to think you don't understand. But he did understand because he could see what I wasn't saying. So I wrote this mother's letter, which was just a quick letter. And I think I typed it up and I pushed it through his door one day and then told him not to contact us again, thinking he would read this letter and it would do some good. But I don't think I heard from him for a while after that.
I mean, like when I got the mother's letter, I remember getting it. I read a mother's letter and I read the first line and I thought, I'm not reading that, because as an addict, you put everything to the back because the drug's so important. I mean, I would literally, my mum and my dad and my stepdad and my sisters are the most important thing to me in the world, and always have been. We've been such a close. But when I'm in addiction, I would literally step over my dead mum dying there on the floor to get the drug. And so when I read that first line, the addiction just wouldn't even allow it in. It was just, it's not, you don't have a thought, you don't have a choice. It would not allow me to in. It takes over that much. I just put the letter down or ripped it up or whatever. But that's when you wrote, that was probably the first time, like when I was getting clean, it was like, I need to, and I wanted to help. Everything came around this mother's letter, which my mum wrote, which, I mean, it only takes about a minute to read. I think it's a good thing for just to read out, so it would help out. It would because when you said you looked for help, I mean, Al-Anon, which is around alcoholics, that doesn't look the same as us. You tried everywhere in the country. It was only one person who was trying. It was an ex-addict in America who was guiding me mum through. There's no help out there for mothers or sisters or friends or family of addicts, because they don't know, and they don't, by any fault of their own, enable the addicts. But they do. That's all they're doing, is enabling the addicts. But I've pass over my lovely mum, who's going to read. She'll read this over for you.
Yeah, I can do if you want.
Yeah, please do.
Obviously, the grammar might not be brilliant. It was just straight from the heart and straight through Gavin's letterbox. But it's a mother's letter. It's a parent of an addict. So we hear that the life of an addict is one of the most horrendous illnesses that has ever been diagnosed. And yes, I do agree with this. But I think there's one place in life that can be worse than an addict, and that's being a parent of an addict. The parent of a son or daughter of whom is completely loved so much is the most awful, heartbreaking and terrifying position you can ever imagine being in, especially having the no control, which is so hard to cope with. The addict is out of control. The addict loses everything in his or her life, but at the same time, that addict can and will lose himself back into the world of drugs. He or she will take as often as he or she wants to, and they escape the world to go to the place that he or she thinks is a better place, to get his or her kicks, or simply just so he or she doesn't have to face up to reality, so he or she can escape for long periods of time. The parent of an addict can never have no escape. They will live through every minute of every day, worrying, panicking, hurting, not knowing where their child is or what they are up to. They will try everything, from begging, from crying, from screaming, from buying them, doing everything they possibly can and bring their child back. Literally anything just to get them away from those dealers that are keeping them under their spell. The parent has no peace, and they will never have no escape, ever. The health of the addict will deteriorate over time, which I've seen. They may pick up for a few days or even weeks if they're lucky, but then they will soon go back downhill again. The health will be up and down and can go on like this for years and years, until the day the drugs will kill them off. The addict. Normally this will happen whilst the addict is under the influence, and therefore the addict will not even realise how bad or how severe this is. Even with death, the addict will just nearly always fall asleep unexpectedly, and then they die. The health of the parent, on the other hand, will deteriorate on a monthly basis, which will move onto a weekly basis as the fight for their precious son or daughter is slipping away. The health of the parent will eventually become so severe that the parent has no strength to fight anymore, or the strength to battle an impossible war against drug abuse with their son or daughter. The drugs have not just taken over the child now, they've taken over the parent. The parent will die slowly, month by month, day by day, as they keep everything to themselves, nowhere to turn. But inside, slowly, they are dying a slow and horrendous death through heartache. Yes, addiction is so hard, and yes, addiction is diagnosed illness, but addiction can be overcome. This has now been proved so many times by the strongest of people, by the addicts who choose every day to get the help that they want and win, by the addicts who choose every day. They defeat this disease. They realize that they only have one life, and no matter how bad of a hand that they have been dealt with in life, they can take control every day. They make a choice to battle and fight to stay clean, and no matter how hard it gets. The parent of the addicts has no control. The parents cannot never beat the addiction for their child. The parent cannot ever make their child do what has to be done. The parent of an addict has only two choices in this situation, and that is they either stay and they be defeated by the whole situation, watching their child slowly die and kill themselves in the process, or the parent walks away from their child, their addicted child, who won't be helped anymore, while let the addiction take everybody's life. If the addict won't choose to fight and let go of the addiction, then the parent has to let go of the child to find their own way and hopefully someday save themselves. If you love someone that won't help themselves, you have to walk away and set them free, no matter how much this breaks your own heart. So yes, I believe in my heart there is something worse than being an addict. I have lived it.
Wow. That is not only proof that a mother's love is unconditional, but also that, you know, it's the most inspirational thing I've heard. And that really is from the heart. It really
It
is.
was from the heart, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that must be hard to read it still, even to this day. I can see the emotion in your face, but thank you for taking the time to come on. And I'm glad that, you know, you've got your son back.
Thank you.
She never gets rid of us now, though, mate.
I bet.
We see it every other day.
Gavin, honestly, mate, you don't know how lucky you are, mate. I just lost my mother 2 weeks ago after a second battle with cancer. And to hear your mum speak like that in a letter about you reminds me so much of my mum, because my mum was very like that when she passed away. And we cleared the house. We found a lot of notes that she'd written directly to me and my brother. An elixir of a life, which basically at the end of it, she said, you might wonder why I've written all of these notes. Well, it's because when someone dies, there are a lot of unanswered questions. And my mum didn't want to leave any unanswered questions. So that was quite emotional for me, because that reminded me of my mum. And you were a lucky guy. You're a very, very lucky guy. So look, we've talked about that route down there, down to addiction. You must have come so close to death, mate.
Mate, well, actually, I did. I overdosed twice on. I never overdosed until I started injecting the cocaine, because it's so dangerous. It just pumps it just bypasses everything, and it just pumps the cocaine straight to your heart, and that's where the danger is. So taking lines of coke and smoking crack cocaine, I could do that for weeks on end without even sleeping. I mean, I had about a £3,000 a week crack habit, and I could do that forever. But once you start injecting, you've got to be so dangerous. It's so dangerous. But when I was injecting the cocaine, I wasn't injected to the high. I was injected. There's a very fine line, Steve, between the high and death. I was injected to the fit that is on that line, and your body would go into spasms, mate. And you'd inject it, and you could feel it. Your legs would shake, you'd collapse, and you'd go into this euphoric dream, which you for about 30, 40 minutes, and you just see things, hear things that aren't even real. And that's where the fine line is, right before death. And I overdosed twice on that. Got took to the hospital. Overdosed twice, but on the third time, which when I physically couldn't stop, and I attempted suicide. That's when I put what I did was I put £50 of cocaine into a spoon. 50. I've never done heroin in my life, mate. A drug's a drug, doesn't bother what it is. Addiction's addiction, drug's a drug. But I put £50 of cocaine in a spoon. I snowballed it with another £50 of heroin, and mixed it together, burned it up, boiled it up, and put it straight in my vein. And that's when I actually died. My dad, obviously, my dad was in the house at the time, and he heard the thump. He came upstairs. I wasn't breathing. He had called the ambulance, and what he had to do is he actually broke me ribs to massage my heart to try and get it like through me ribs to try and get it going again. And he had to do that for 4.5 minutes. I've actually got me. This is the paperwork I got off the hospital, and it was like I died. There was seven jolts to get me heartbeat going again. I was dead for 4.5 minutes, and but what they said was the lack of oxygen to my brain. When I came back through, I wouldn't come back through as I was. I would come back through bit autistic or a bit something different about us. I wouldn't be the same normal person. And I was put in induced coma for 6 days. And I had to gradually bring us round, getting each, because all my organs had failed. And they said they actually said, I don't even know, once I turned the machines off, would I be all right? And what happened, mate, this is how powerful addiction was. Even after this time, I woke up and I was self-isolation for 6.5 days in the ICU ward, and I was intubated. I was treated for aspiration pneumonia, and I was extubated then down to the ward. And then as soon as I woke up, mate, it says a patient just discharged himself and not willing to speak to the mental health team. And we've discussed this with the mental health team, gave him a crisis number. Patient self-charged, 100% against our medical advice at the highest AKI stage I've ever seen in this admission. So I woke up from a coma, mate, induced coma, which is where my book starts. And I woke up and I knew something was missing. I didn't know what it was. I was looking around the room. I didn't know if I was dead, if I was alive. And it gradually came back. But I knew something was missing, and it was the drug. And I woke up from a coma, self-discharged myself, went straight back out there to get me drug. That's where the book starts. And so that's how powerful and how dangerous it is. But I see more and more of it now. It's like, because you do coke or you do your crack is so expensive, a lot of people now actually turn into injected, which I honestly got to predict over the next couple of years, mate. Addiction is going to rise. The death in addiction is going to double, treble in days, because people are starting getting into rejecting cocaine now, because it's 100 times more intense than crack, and it's becoming more and more popular. And it's going to kill all of our kids, mate. It's going to kill all of the teenagers, because that's what they're getting introduced to now. Instead of have a line of coke or having injected this, mate, it gives you the best high ever, and that's what's going to be so dangerous nowadays, mate. So that's why I'm trying to help the kids.
Absolutely frightening. Tragedy struck your family as well, with the murder of your brother. Tell us about that.
It was like an adopted brother. He was when I moved down to London, I met the two main people who would be best friends. I met Amakri and Kian Sabir, we call it ourselves brother. There's me, Kian, and Savas, and we're all brothers. That's Savas there. He's like me. He's my brother now. He's my best friend in the world. Calling me brother. He's every day he's on the phone. He rings me mom when if I ever go missing. And he's probably the only person who I've ever listened to in my life. He's everything. He was Kian's business partner. He was like, to me, he was the godfather of London. He was the most influential, amazing man you've ever met in your life. Self-made millionaire. He's unbelievable. But Kian, I met Kian through the girl I was engaged to. I moved to London with Jerry. Her best friend was a girl called Anna Tavern, who was another PH3 girl, and she was going out with Kian. And so when I went out, that's Kian, just to the guy sitting with the peach coloured top on, the one with the bald head, who looks like Vin Diesel. He was I met him, and when I met him, it was like, boom, who is this guy? He ran nearly every door in London. He took over Marseille when he was 15, moved to London, took over that by his early 20s. There's a massive thing in London, and every single nightclub and bar got shut down for 40. It was in all the papers, got shut down for 48 hours. And that was because Kian was going on a rant around London. They shut everything down. But he was like an idol to us. He was like a proper gangster, do you know what I mean? And that's when I met him. But when he was an amazing man. He was an intelligent man for coming from nothing to what he was. But he moved to Bali about 6-7 years ago now, and he was writing his own book, and he would go around, but he was like a big man, big intimidating man. He would shout at people and all this. And he came out of a bar. It's actually on Daily Motion and on YouTube, his death. And he came out of a bar, and it was set up. Oh, sorry, mate, I'll just cancel this.
Okay, no worries.
So he was actually set up, and he came out of a bar in Bali, and he was machine gunned down by the Bali police, about 20 of them. And it's on YouTube and Daily Motion, and they kill him. Absolute murder. And they said he had a knife, they said he had a gun, and he came out and he had a spoon from the restaurant, and he was murdered. And that affected me massively, mate. I was actually in rehab, my first rehab at the time, trying that. But this is how the addicted brain works again. I was so devastated, but my addiction took over, went, get yourself out of rehab here. You can get yourself out, get on and blame his death for you to go and get high again. So that's what I did, mate. I came out and I spoke to Savis. Savis told us about it. And I was meant to be going down for the funeral. So instead of going down to London for the funeral, I went to London, got on the crack, and I missed one of my best mates. So Savis is my best mate, but I missed my other best mate's funeral because I was out getting high, coming out of rehab, and just did that to get high. And I made the choice to take, when I come out there, I was clean at the time, but I made a choice to take a drug. But once you took me drug, I was gone again for months. So that's what's so dangerous about addiction. It's a disease. Well, Health Organization says it is a disease, but it's the only disease where you have a choice to take your first drug. So if you've got cancer, like, I'm so sorry to hear about your mum, I really am again, mate. But if you have cancer, you don't have that as a choice. It's, you've got that disease. That's it. You can't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I don't want to have cancer. With addiction, you've got that choice not to have it. So once you start taking it, you're as good as dead. It's just educating everyone how not to take the first drug, or not to tempt to see if they're an addict. Why tempt something? If there was a tablet there and it said like, oh, take this, it'll give you a nice high, but you're definitely going to have cancer, or you're definitely going to have AIDS, or you're definitely going to have this, you wouldn't take that drug. So why take it to risk addiction? And I used to always question myself, mate, like, why am I an addict? Why is God gave us this disease? Why me? Why not him or her? And I don't know if there's a God. I don't know what I believe. I know there's something, because I should be dead on numerous occasions. And something, look, it gives everybody it gives everyone the power to overcome what they did. So I think I've got addiction because I've been looking after my body's absorbed it and being able to get through what I've been through. I mean, the drugs I've done would have killed a horse, mate. It would have killed 10 people. And so that's why I'm glad I've had this disease, because I think I've had the disease just so I can write this book. Write the book with me mum, because she's wrote her bits. But I wish I had the help that this book's going to provide, because it's completely self-written, mate. It's had the grammar in that edited, but I haven't allowed the company to like add bits in or take bits out. Everyone's who's mentioned everybody's true. I've had the support of everyone who's into it, who's supporters, like saying, yeah, write it. Because the book's going to help that much. And there's only a handful of people who've read the draft, and everyone's just like blown away by it, didn't know what actually goes on in your head with it. It's because if you're not an addict, you'll never understand not being able to say no. It's horrible.
How did you turn your life around and get clean?
Mate, everybody has a rock bottom. When you're that out of control, you can't stop. But the addicts who are lucky enough to hit rock bottom and recover, everyone's is the rock bottom, and everyone's like, I was either on the streets and I was dead, or like died, or I was beaten so severely through drugs, or they go to prison. I had so many bad rock bottoms. Like I was told I was to be death. I was on the streets of London for a bit, but even the waking up hospital like that, waking up just under 9 stone with nothing, wasn't me rock bottom. What my rock bottom was, mate, is when I've discharged myself and I was going to get my next drug, but from hospital, my mum was waiting for us in mine.
Take your time, mate. Take your time.
And she said she was dying, but she wouldn't allow us to go to hospital with her. So that was my rock bottom. My rock bottom actually came up and knocked me out. It's not the worst thing that's happened to us. it's not even the top 3, but hearing them words that she wouldn't allow me to support her, me knock bottom game knocked us out, mate, and that it just made us change everything about my life and made us wanna. It's the first time I think I've ever put anything before a drug. And that was love for me. And even my mum's tried in the past, like to love us, to ignore us. But that point was like, it was the worst minute of my life, even. And so she says, if you go a month's clean, I'll tell you about why I'm dying. If you go 3 months clean, you can start coming with us to the hospital. And so what it was I got myself a month clean, and then 3 months clean. And my mum sat us down. She says, my mum was under that much stress. She got pneumonia, and it was me who was killing her. So my addiction was actually killing me. Mum, she'd lost weight. She just couldn't even come out of the house. She was scared to answer a phone, and she was put into hospital. The hospital actually thought she was going to make it through pneumonia, and because she's a chronic asthmatic as well. So my disease was that stressful. It was actually killing me, mum. And with me getting clean, my mum actually was okay. So although I was killing me, mum, beating the addiction actually saved me, mum, because my mum didn't know if I stayed in active addiction, I think another 2 years, me mum wouldn't be here today, mate. So that was my rock bottom.
It's just one of those things that you needed, you know, to maybe jolt your mind back into, you know, into the real world, and you know that in itself certainly seems to have done that. So obviously you get clean, you change your life around. Yeah. The big question is, you know, as a reformed addict, which you are now, how do you stay clean and sober?
Mate, I think the biggest thing is routine, and it's so hard because I'm not going to lie and say I don't think about drugs. It's you sometimes get these flashbacks. Think, oh, that'd be a good idea, but you've got to be in that control now of your own self to give yourself a choice. So yes, I think about it, but everyone probably thinks of like loads of stupid things. But I might think about something, but I don't act on it. But I need routine. I need to get up in the morning. I need to have me. First thing I do is get the water. Is have honey and water, and I think about my day, what I'm going to do. But I need a routine. I need to go to my gym. I need to do my writing. I need to at least help one person a day as well. It doesn't matter if it's coming down my mum's house and doing a job for her, like the hoovering. So I need to at least help do one good thing a day. I need to go to the gym. I need to speak. I do speak to certain psychotherapists as well. Not often because it's just have different views on addiction, but it's just good let out. And I need to just think about today, which is a big thing, which I'll do like about AA and NA. It's just for today. I love that aspect of their beliefs, because if I start thinking about tomorrow or next week, I start procrastinating. I start thinking about, and my mind wanders, and I'll go from like, I'm going to go on holiday, then I'm going to go on holiday to Ibiza. I'm going to go on holiday to Ibiza, and I'm going to go to Ocean Club. I'm going to go there, and then I'm going to go out on the drugs and on a yacht. And my mind just steamrolls. And so I never procrastinate now. All I think about is I'm clean for the day. I'm staying clean today, and I just keep everything in a day. But when you start to get clean, a day is too long. You've got to do it by the hour. You've got to think like, right, I'm not going to take, if it's 1 o'clock, I'm not going to do anything for the next hour. Keep yourself busy for that. And you just build up and build up and build up, and never ever go beyond a day. Never start thinking, oh, I'm going to be doing this next week or this. Obviously you need goals, but never procrastinating, mate. And that's how I stay clean the day. I keep myself busy. I help people, and I keep my circles small now, mate. So like I've got one person who I train with, which is my dad, and my dad's best mate as well, Tommy. I'll train with them, but then I had to change all my circles. I had to change all my friends, because if you stay around those circles, you're going to change. Because like one of the best quotes is, shows the books you read and the TV you watch and the friends you knock about with, and I'll tell you who you'll be in 5 years. And that's what it is, mate. If you stay in them circles, you're going to take drugs again. If you knock about with those people, you're going to do it again. But it's just like, it is so hard. And one thing I was lucky enough, I had my friends around us. I had like Sav in London, who is my best mate in the world. I had Franny Bennett in Liverpool, who's another one of my best friends. And Franny was there, and that's Franny Bennett, Big Eddie Scarsfield, and me when I was living in Liverpool. But
of course, people are tuning into the podcast and might think, Franny, I recognise him. Well, he comes from one of my, if not one of my favourite films, which of course is Shooters.
It is. It's one of my favourite films, mate. And he's an unbelievable talent. He's an unbelievable actor. And to be honest, mate, he's one of the nicest men you'll ever meet in the world. He actually, he's on the phone to me. My mum, and every time I speak to him, every time I see him, he's like, he doesn't say, how you doing, Gavin? He's like, how's your mum doing? How's your dad doing? How's your stepdad? How's your sisters? That's the first thing he asks. And then, how are you, Gavin? But he's been a massive player in my life. Like, he's helped guide us. He's helped get us clean. And he's just such a nice man, mate. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely man. And I think the world of him, mate. And that's why I keep my circles. So there's like, they're the circles I keep around us, as well as yourself. You're inspirational to us, mate. And Stevie Lang as well. That's as far as my circles go, mate.
Yeah. So, but I mean, look, it is an amazing story. The book, I presume, is been therapeutic in a lot of ways for you to sit down and to write it and to go back over what is an amazing story.
Mate, it was when I was getting clean and I started writing the book, it helped us so much in seeing damage I'd done to my family. It helped us understanding the way I was and why I was like that, because I researched addiction to try and find loads of people's theories. I've researched actually started to understand how severe addiction was and how you can overcome it. But writing it, just going through my life, mate, to see the chances I've been given, the chances I've blown, the friends I've hurt, my family I've hurt. It's just a way of like, I'll never be able to say sorry to the people I've hurt as much as I have and the changes I've done. But doing me book is a way to help people, to help other addicts. And I can't change what I've done. I can't change the man I was. All I can do is change the man I'm about to become. And my books help me. So it gave us a new life, but it's hopefully going to save the teenagers growing up, or like my mum says, my mum's point of view, because the book's in 2 chapters. So it starts off with my point, and then my mum does her point on each of the 12 points of my life. And so it's going to save families of addicts as well, because there's nothing out there for families of addicts. So that's why there's nothing like that. This book, there's having a story, which is a true story. Everything's true in it, from running along parallel to each other, and the mother of an addict and an addict. So it's going to benefit the addicts and families of addicts. But it just helped us. It's helped us so much. It really has.
What's your plans for the future then, Gavin, other than the book coming out? I've started talking to the Northumbria Police, and what I'm going to be doing now is we're starting in Ferry Hill, and I'm going to be going out doing talks on my journey as an addict. Because there's no, if an addict doesn't want to change, even though if you're in so much of active addiction, you can't change. But if an addict doesn't want to change, it's hard to stop that. But what I want to do is go into the schools as the teenagers, and tell them my life, tell them what I've done, tell them all the mistakes I've made. Because drugs to some teenagers sounds like a good idea. So it's showing them how much it destroys your life, how much it's destroyed my family's life. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be going around the schools, and I'll be in the school. I was starting off in Ferry Hill. I'll be in the school for about an hour doing a talk, and we'll be doing different talks around all the schools in the Northeast, and hopefully it'll branch out all around the country. And it's just going to make them see what a killer disease addiction is, and let them experience addiction without taking it. So I'll be going to tell them, I'll tell them everything, the darkest points of my life to the good bits of my life, but it'll give them more of a choice then. Or is this little bit of weed worth it? Because all drugs does, it starts at small drugs and it goes up to the worst drugs, mate. And it's, so hopefully my book will help. Even if it helped one kid, mate, it would make us proud. So that's all what it's about. Well done, mate. Listen, The Devil, The Diary of an Addict is due for release later this year in the UK and in America. Best of luck with that. Best of luck with all the talks. You're an inspiration to me, mate, because honestly, the battle that you've been through is one that you should never have won. And thanks to your mum as well for spending the time to come on and give it from a parent's point of view. But the time and the clock has beaten us. Gavin, Dixon, absolute pleasure.
Mate, honest God, thank you so much for everything you've done for us as well. You've been a legend.
Take care, mate. God bless.
Bye bye.